319. So because our September number is going to come out pretty soon. 323,654. 323 current one divided by the 6 months ago minus 1. Actually, I'm going to multiply this by hundreds to get the percentage. So during the last 12 months, overall prices have increased by about 1.12%. Okay. So that's going to be my pi 0. We typically use the Greek letter pi to designate inflation. All right. So if you're going to first index face value, F1, the cap F1, is face value last semester, technically speaking, 1 plus inflation rate, which is 1,000 times 1 plus 1.12%. So face value for the purposes of calculating next period's coupon is going to be 1,011. Then coupon 1, come on, which I'm going to call CA1, is equal to face value 1 times coupon rate. So that's 1,011.20 times 1.80%. So next period, next 6 months from today, I know that this bond is going to pay $18.20 in coupons, right? What if the inflation was 4% during the last 6 months? Then the face value would have been 1040. Higher coupon. You keep doing this every 6 months. 6 months from today, Treasury is going to say, okay, let's check. We did from August to February. So at the end of January, they're going to say, okay, here's the January CPI compared to that to August CPI. No, it's going to be March, not January. I'm sorry. March CPI compared to August CPI, it increased by 5%. then face value is going to increase by 5% compared to that 1040. Well, if you think about it, 5% of that is 104.52. So face value is going to go to 1092. So next coupon is going to be 1.8% of 1092, which is obviously higher. You keep doing this. After the final coupon is paid, yeah, let's say this is 10 years, we have the F20, okay, because we have 26-month periods. In addition to paying that final coupon that is calculated using F20, it also pays you the face value F20. It doesn't pay you 1,000. It pays you whatever that number is. Suppose during those 2 years, CPI went up exactly 4 times, okay? So it was 100 now, it went up to 400. That's a 300% increase, right? Instead of paying you $1,000, it's going to pay you $4,000. So it basically protects you against inflation. Independent of what the inflation numbers are, the real return you get is the same. That's the beauty of it. And the yield that you get is a real yield. It's going to be less than the nominals. Let me show you currently what they are, at least for some of them. Let's see. If you want to get quickly, go to cnbc.com, type US 5-year in the search. Currently, the regular treasuries or the nominal treasuries yield, I'm going to round it up to 2 digits, 374. Okay. But the tips is 128. So let's do some calculations with that. Current nominal 5 years treasury yield is 374, and tips yield okay. The difference I shouldn't say difference, but approximately speaking, the difference between the two is kind of what market is attaching an expectation of inflation over the next 5 years. In fact, we can calculate the break-even inflation rate. One plus nominal divided by 1 plus tips minus 1. So in this case, it will be 1 plus 3.74% divided by 1 plus 2.42%, 43%. The reason I call that a break-even inflation instead of expectation, technically speaking, it is not a statistical quantity. Market basically says if you expect inflation over the next 5 years on average to be larger than 243, you should go with the tips. Let's say you're a Democrat like I am, and you believe all these tariff policies of Trump is going to increase inflation. Whether I'm right or wrong is besides the point. That's my belief. Let's say I think it's going to be 5%. Which one do I pick for my investment? Well, if I pick nominal, I'm going to get 374. But in the meantime, every year, I'm going to lose 5% of that to inflation. So my real rate is going to be negative. On the other hand, if I take the tips on top of that 128, I'm going to get the inflation, which is 5. So my yield, if my expectation happens, is 628 if I choose tips. But if I choose nominal, I only get 374. So in that case, I would prefer the tips. But if, on the other hand, you're a Republican, you believe Trump is the second coming of somebody, Buddha maybe, and he's going to reduce inflation to 0. It's no brainer. You got to pick the nominal ones. Okay, it's that simple. That's why we call it the break-even inflation. Of course, that 243 is actually pretty high. Do you know what Fed's target inflation rate is? 2. There's nothing set in stone, but that's kind of the practice of Fed. But they've been a little bit slow in reducing interest rates because they're not sure about how this uncertainty about what you want to call tariffs are going to work out. Because if it turns out it creates a lot of inflation, in order to reduce that, you're going to have to keep the monetary policy tight. Yes. Not on specific, not everywhere, no. But going back to that, actually, I'll talk about that next time. I'll give you kind of a lesson on how Silicon Valley Bank went under, even though they didn't have to. They were not losing money business wise. They just did not manage their interest rate risk properly. And there was, in fact, a bank run on them. And I'll tell you how that mechanism works through the risk of the treasuries. All right. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. We'll start with Silicon Valley Bank. Then we'll talk about other things about the bond markets.